Hey, welcome to the Get Out Debt Guy show. I'm the old Get Out Debt Guy, Steve Rode, and as always is the new Get Out Debt Guy, Damon Day. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, Damon.
Hey, today we're going to be talking about bankruptcy attorneys, and we have a special reason for doing that because yesterday we're actually together. Normally, Damon is in Phoenix, and I'm here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we do this. We connect online to do the podcast, but this week Damon is here in the flesh, so we can do this in the live. Or what do the kids say these days? They got any fancy clue for what they say?
I have no idea.
I have no idea either. So yesterday, Damon and I had lunch with a bankruptcy attorney and had a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, I thought it was enlightening. What'd you think?
Yeah. I mean, mainly it was the focus. Apparently, I'm not close enough to the mic. Steve's waving me on or shooing a fly. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So mainly the focus was the attorney was feeling a little bit frustrated on situations where he'd have clients come into his office that he felt, should be filing bankruptcy, but they were persuaded or maybe weren't persuaded by the attorney and then end up, contacting a debt relief company or getting into something else. And he was just kind of frustrated with, what do I do with all these people that come to me for help, but then don't end up hiring our firm, even though they need to hire our firm?
Right. Well, and also that the bankruptcy attorneys have a less sexy message, or they're just not as good at delivering the message as all the debt relief companies that are out there.
I don't even think it's less sexy. I think it's not sexy.
Their bankruptcy attorneys, for the most part, are good technicians.
Yeah, the attorney was kind of explaining, there's a lot of attorneys are good in front of a jury,
Yeah.
in front of a judge, and being able to explain facts and things
Right.
like that. But they're not great at the emotional side of things, which debt so often brings into play.
Yeah, they're good at technically describing how it's going to work, but they're terrible at things like you were telling me the story recently about you had a client who kind of got an abrupt bankruptcy consultation, and the attorney said it's going to be $1,500 up front, but didn't give them any suggestion on how they were going to get that money.
Yeah, this is actually very recent. Lady I talked to at the beginning of the week. I was here actually when I spoke with her, and she had already met with the bankruptcy attorney. It's likely that she does need to file a bankruptcy. It makes the most sense. And she'd already met with an attorney, but she came away from that meeting with a feeling of not relief.
Yeah.
Didn't feel better about the situation. And it all came down to the attorney was just basically, oh, you pay me $1,500 or whatever it was, and send me all your information and we're going to file bankruptcy. And, he didn't really get into this is how it's going to work, or this is why we should be doing bankruptcy. And she came away with that, with the feeling of that's not something I want to do.
Right.
Even though that when you look at the situation, it absolutely is the best, strategy so far based on what I know about her situation. And I think a big problem that a lot of attorneys have is they focus so much on, let me tell you why bankruptcy is the answer, rather than say, hey, let's sit down and let's look at your situation as a whole, and let's walk through it and let's look at all the different strategies.
Right.
And for consumers, it feels more like the bankruptcy attorney is pushing them into bankruptcy. The debt settlement salesperson is pushing them into debt settlement.
Yeah. Credit counseling.
Credit counseling person is pushing them into credit counseling. And Dave Ramsey's is calling him a moron.
Yeah.
So it's like every person they meet with, it's just that entity is just like, let me tell you why you have to do this. And nobody's really saying, hey, let's take a step back and let's figure out what's going on in your life, how you got here, where you want to go. Let's look at all these different strategies and figure out what makes the most sense. And that's not inherently a bankruptcy attorney problem.
No.
That's a problem with
that sounds like you.
Really.
I mean, that's what you do.
That's what I do, but I, Steve,
Yes.
am an enigma.
That's true.
There ain't no other like me.
That's true. And if you want to talk to the enigma,
Word of the day.
You can go to damonday.com, DAMONDAY.com. So the attorney was talking about how unusual your approach is and how even when people go to what they think is the kinder, friendlier solution like credit counseling.
Yeah,
He said,
and there ain't no counseling involved.
no, there's no counseling, but it's just pre-qualification is what it is.
Yeah,
But, even he was saying, yeah, we have a calculator in our office and we show them, this is how much you're going to lose in future retirement income when you spend the next 5 years just making regular payments.
yeah,
And it's something that you and I have talked about a lot that people don't appreciate. Now, here's another thing. You might go to, have you ever been to a dentist that you didn't like? I have. You just didn't, gel with, or some sort of professional.
I don't go to dentists, man. I don't like dentists.
Okay.
I just make sure my teeth are good.
All right. But if you go to a bankruptcy attorney and you don't mesh with them, they give you the ick factor. You don't
Yeah.
like them.
Yeah.
Get a second opinion. Don't discount it. And don't pick up the phone waiting to talk to the next smooth talking debt relief salesperson. You need to exercise a little bit of, I can't think of the right word. You have to be your own advocate. All right.
Yeah.
If you don't like a bankruptcy attorney that you talk to, then find a different one. Find a second one.
Yeah, just because you don't jive with the attorney or don't like their bedside manner, if you will, doesn't mean that bankruptcy is a bad option.
Right.
So then that's the problem is a lot of times that people make choices based on how to deal with their debt, just based on the fact that maybe that attorney wasn't Mr. Personality.
Right.
So it is important to get the information. And like Steve's saying, if you meet with a bankruptcy attorney, you think a bankruptcy may make sense for you, and you don't like what the one attorney says, you can always get another opinion or a third opinion if you
Right.
need to. But just keep in mind that companies that sell settlement and credit counseling, and even Dave Ramsey's counseling that he offers,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these people are salespeople. They're in sales. They're good at using emotion and getting people to say yes. Most bankruptcy attorneys aren't inherent salespeople.
Well, and plus they don't have to be a bit because they have a solution that protects you legally, works instantly.
Yeah. But I'm not saying they need to sell you. I'm cautioning consumers that a lot of these debt relief companies have professional salespeople
right? Yeah.
that are good at convincing you to do what they want you to do.
Well, yeah.
And bankruptcy attorneys usually don't have that skill.
No. Oh, that's true.
So just be aware of that is what I'm saying.
Well,
That,
the other skill,
you are getting sold, some solution, and you need to advocate for yourself, as Steve said, and make sure that you're not going with the solution because the person sounds good.
right. Now, I also said that bankruptcy attorneys are good technicians,
Yeah.
but they're not necessarily good out of the box thinkers. Because, yesterday during lunch, the attorney that we were meeting with had some really interesting ways of protecting people from their creditors.
Yeah.
And I really loved his buzz off letter
Yeah.
analogy. You come in, you hire a firm, you're not ready to file yet. We just send the buzz off letters to your creditors. And then if they send any mail to us, we throw it away.
Yeah. Well, and he said in the letter, they tell them that you can send mail, but we're not going to read it.
Right.
You can send whatever you want. We ain't reading it.
Right. Well, that's why, you have the legal protection from a bankruptcy
Yeah.
attorney. And how much legal protection do you have when you work with a debt settlement company?
Not much.
Yeah. And how about a credit counselor?
None.
None. So just because somebody might be abrupt or rude doesn't mean that they don't have a solution that's good for you. They're just not the person you need to work with.
Yeah.
I always say the best thing that you can do is evaluate a bankruptcy attorney by their office. Does the staff treat you nice? Can you communicate with them? Can you ask questions and not feel like an imposition?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's important and it's a big decision for people. And the only reason we're bringing it up today is because we met with, we're not going to name names or name the firm, but super nice guy, and it just he brought up some good points that I hadn't thought about in a
Yeah.
while since we did that bankruptcy education project back 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
where we actually tried to like get a group of attorneys together across the country
Yeah.
where we could say, hey, look, these are good attorneys, we can recommend them.
Yeah.
And
Think outside the box.
yeah, exactly. And it was like pulling teeth with a lot of these attorneys, man. And that was my kind of my first eye-opening experience into not all attorneys are the same. It doesn't mean they have bad ideas or bad solutions with bankruptcy, but it also doesn't mean that bankruptcy is right either.
Yeah.
So it just, I think the point of this podcast was just to, when you're out there, you're looking for solutions, you have to advocate for yourself and you have to try to set the emotion aside and look at the options for what they are, knowing that whoever you're going to be talking to is going to sugarcoat whatever the option is that they're presenting, whether it's a bankruptcy option or a settlement option or credit counseling. They're going to give you the rosy version of that, and you have to kind of look through that.
Well, it's funny. One of the things we talked about yesterday very briefly was how some people use the you have to repay your debt morality pitch to get you to sign up for their program. And yet, bankruptcy is actually, there are other sections of the Bible that actually talk about forgiving debt and how that's more biblical. And it's even in the Constitution. So everybody has their own spin.
Yeah, and you can always find the spin.
Yeah.
So the easiest thing to do is just to have me tell you what is.
That is the easiest thing to do.
But that is biased advice for sure. I would never recommend somebody hire me, even though it would help them, but that would be biased advice.
So
try to stay unbiased.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you caught it in the follow-up email that I sent, but it said that Damon is the best debt coach that I know.
I did catch it.
Except for me.
Yeah, but you're retired, so you're stuck with me, apparently.
That's right.
And I actually have qualities that are better than some of Steve, although he is better at a lot of things than I am.
That's true.
But I have better jokes.
You do.
I do.
But you know why I didn't want to go for a bike ride today?
I have no idea why you didn't want to go for a bike ride, other than it's a bajillion degrees out.
I didn't want to be too tired.
Oh. Yeah, my jokes are for sure better.
Oh, come on.
This is what you call winging a podcast. This was, hey, I'm leaving for Savannah early in the morning. You want to do another podcast?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm here. Let's do it.
And we had lunch first, too.
Yeah, we had lunch. It was a good lunch.
Yeah. So recently we talked about the morality of debt. We talked about debt guilt. Now we're talking about bankruptcy. The overarching theme of, I guess, everything that we talk about is if you're having financial problems, don't make any assumptions. And please, this is going to be easy for me to say. Damon's going to agree with me, I know, before I say it. But nobody is going to judge you here. Damon's not going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you. Bankruptcy attorneys are not going to judge you. Debt relief people may salivate over you. Credit counselors may be very happy that you called and they could close the deal. But if you are worried about how Damon or myself or even like a bankruptcy attorney is going to think about you and your situation, we even briefly mentioned this yesterday during lunch. Nobody judges you.
Yeah. What do you always say? Nobody thinks about you as much as you think they think about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not that important.
Your creditors don't think about you. The only time a creditor might bring up your value or worth is only as a tool to manipulate you to pay.
Yeah.
A debt collector can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
for sure.
And I have heard many sales calls from debt relief people, whether it's settlement or validation or whatever magic BS is being sold, about how, it's more righteous to repay your debt, or you made that promise, you need to repay it.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
That's just a sales tool to manipulate you to buy their product.
Yeah. And I would say, as like a takeaway, if there's any bankruptcy attorneys listening to this, I would say, a better approach would be to kind of do what I do, which is, don't just have somebody come into the office and be like, okay, Are we going to do a 7 or are we going to do a 13? Let's figure it out. Like,
Right.
look at other options because people are naturally going to be resistant to bankruptcy. And if you present them with all options and they gravitate towards bankruptcy as an option by looking at everything else, now they're not going to be afraid of it because they've looked at everything. The problem with that, though, is bankruptcy attorneys inherently hate all the other options.
Right.
So
Right. And they also don't take into account that if somebody is coming into your office, they come with the predisposition that this is the last resort.
Yeah.
Like
they're
they've hit
looking
the
at- yeah.
bottom of the barrel and they're here. So you got to meet people where they are, right? And if you can remember that they think they are at their lowest point because they're here in front of you,
Yeah.
just treat them with kindness.
Yeah. Yeah. And then a lot of attorneys do. It's just you get those oddball ones where it's like, I guess they don't like making money.
Yeah.
I mean, they certainly don't like helping people, but I don't know how. Like, I had a conversation with that client, as you mentioned last week, and within 20 minutes, it was very clear, and we were having this conversation, going over different options, and I was explaining based on her situation what the bankruptcy would look like,
Mhm.
and it had her feeling instead of afraid of bankruptcy, had her going, "Oh, I think this actually sounds like a good solution. For the first time, I'm actually feeling like I can breathe a little bit." And how that attorney was not able to just like, okay, yeah, here's how it works and here's why it's going to work
Yeah.
for you. And it's like, you want to say he lost a sale, if you want to call it a sale, but that person would have for sure hired that attorney if they just had I don't know, a modicum of compassion and spent a little time explaining,
Mhm.
how the process worked and why it made sense for her and, cover the things that people typically are afraid of. Like, yeah, what's this going to do to my credit? And,
Right.
how does this, am I going to be able to get credit cards again in the future? And, all the things that people have this fear that they have about bankruptcy. Most of the time it's about
Correct.
unfounded,
Yeah.
fears, but nobody really explains anything to consumers, and everybody but bankruptcy attorneys are pushing those fears because they
Mhm.
want you to be afraid.
It's a good sales tool.
Banks want you to be afraid of bankruptcy, and debt settlement people want you to be afraid of it, and credit counselors want you to be afraid of it,
Right.
and Dave Ramsey wants you to hate it.
Right.
Right? Everybody wants you to hate it. And again, we're not saying bankruptcy is the answer.
No,
It's
just be open-minded.
it's just one option of many that you can look at, and by process of elimination, you will arrive at the option that makes the most sense for you and your family in the situation that you're in. It's not option A, option B, option C,
Right.
right? It's here's all the options laid out together, and option A is the right option for some people.
Yeah.
And then a different option A is the right option for another person.
Well, as I say, it is not the last resort.
It's a resort.
It's a resort.
In Cancun.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we talked about was how ridiculously easy it is to rebuild your credit.
Yeah.
After bankruptcy, and how you can have better credit faster by filing bankruptcy than with other solutions. And then a lot of people just don't understand that. My eyes were opened years ago when that report came out from the Federal Reserve about how much better people do financially moving forward by filing bankruptcy rather than just letting the situation linger.
Yeah. Who's that singer? Let it linger?
I
Couldn't think
don't know
something
that.
Have to let it linger. That one?
Well,
Now you got it, right? It sounds just like her.
no, I still don't know what it is, but we got you singing. That's all I care.
Well, yeah, and I tell clients all the time, if your credit already sucks or it's about to because you're missing payments, the one thing about a bankruptcy is it puts a period on it. It's
Right.
done. It's over right now. And then if you start looking at a 5-year timeline and you go, okay, what's my life going to look like in 5 years? Well, if you file a Chapter 7 today, in 5 years, the bankruptcy is 5 years old. It happened 5 years ago. You've had 5 years to rebuild your credit, get some new accounts, get some new cards, save up all this money. So you've got cash in the bank now and you're in a much stronger position to borrow versus if you Dave Ramsey your way out of it. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying it's wrong, but 5 years, you might just be to where bankruptcy got you today.
Right.
5 years from now, just finally got out of debt, no money saved really. And yeah, good credit. But when you have a bankruptcy from 5 years ago, in most cases, if you kept your nose clean since then, you'll have good credit. Even with the bankruptcy on your credit, you can still easily be in the mid to high sevens with a 5-6-year-old bankruptcy on your credit report, as long as everything else has been good since then.
And the attorney yesterday also was kind of chuckling about the fact that these days, people that go bankrupt get credit offers like right out of the gate.
Yeah.
You've got creditors eager to lend to you.
I always tell my clients, how do banks make money? If they stopped loaning money to anybody that had questionable credit, they'd run out of customers. They got to get creative, man.
Right.
They're like, oh, you had a bankruptcy? Oh, that was 3 years ago. Fine, no big deal. Well, what did the attorney say about, and we already knew this, but how creditors like get excited if they have somebody that just filed bankruptcy?
Oh, yeah, because they're not going to be able to file for 8 years.
Yeah, it's like, here's some money. Here
Right.
you go. Good luck. Take those training wheels right off of there.
Yeah, time to reload. Hey, if you think that bankruptcy is a mistake that you don't want to repeat again, just learn from it. There's no sense wasting a perfectly good mistake. Just kind of do an autopsy, be introspective about how you got to where you are today, and then don't do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always like to clarify when we do calls on or podcasts on bankruptcy, we're not saying bankruptcy.
Mm-mm.
It's just, we tend to talk about it more because that's the one option that tends to get villainized so much
Right.
compared to the others. But they're all, all options should be on the table. And it's not even just the main 4 that most people think of when you think of bankruptcy, credit counseling, debt settlement. And for lack of a better word, I just keep calling it Dave Ramsey because everybody knows.
Yeah, eating
debt
beans and rice.
snowball, it's just easier to say the Dave Ramsey strategy because he spent a lot of time and money building that brand up. He's like the Kleenex of debt relief.
Well, as he said in that deposition that I read, he gets paid for every lead.
Yeah. But there's a lot of other strategy too, even outside of those 4 that tend to get marketed to everybody. So there's just the main focus should be sit down, talk to as many people as you can, gather the facts, get all the information, and then figure out what is going to make sense for you and your situation based on your circumstances. And just as important, what your goals are in the future. What are you trying to accomplish?
You have a kid going to school in 5 years or you're nearing retirement? Or...
that all has to be looked at.
I just read something recently. Oh, I know what it was. It was a woman who said that she's 60 years old and has no money saved for retirement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see that a lot.
Now she's just dealing with her debt.
Her debt?
Debt.
Yeah. Well, she's got to get rid of it.
Yeah. She's got a kid going to college.
Like muy pronto.
That's the other thing, man. You get people to go, well, I got a kid going to college. She needs to listen to one of our older podcasts.
Yeah.
Sending your kid to expensive college.
Yeah. We're sending to college at all. I mean, it's gotten to the point where the trades are where I swear there's been a full shift.
Yeah.
Where, what college was to people 25 years ago, the trades are there now.
Yeah.
Like the new shiny penny that there's huge opportunity. You can make good money. Nobody else is doing, what are you going to do? I was watching a podcast or a video of something the other day and they were kind of making a joke, but they were serious. I think it was like yesterday about what is the next generation going to do when the last plumber retires?
I know.
Because we're not producing any more of these guys.
Well, here's another thing. You can make a career in public service, like being a firefighter or a police officer, if that's what you want to do. Here in North Carolina, they offer a 38-week program that gives you all the certifications and everything you need to get hired in the county to become a firefighter. You don't need 4 years. You're starting out, you've got a pension that's building. You've got all those things. You got a whole career ahead of you for 38 weeks worth of training.
Oh, I got a buddy who's my age. He was a corrections officer and went to the academy out of college, and he retired. He's 47. We're about to be 48 this year. He's 47. He just retired. And I don't remember this, he's told me, but I don't remember, but it's something like
75%.
I think it's even a little bit more than, I think it's more like 80 something percent. He gets 80 some odd percent. And I could be wrong on the numbers, but it's up there of his salary for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And he's not even 50 yet.
Yeah. Well, it's like guys that go into the military and do their 20 years.
Yeah, and you can
Get
have a
out.
second career if you want
Yeah,
to.
these days.
I was asking him the other day. I was like, "So are you going to do something? I mean, you're only 47 years old. You can do
Right.
something else?" And he's like, "Nah, maybe." He doesn't need to. He's set. And it's
Sure.
like people like, "Oh, I don't want to work with my hands or whatever. I don't
Right.
want to be a fireman or I don't want to be a cop." Or
Right.
those are good careers. I mean, unless they live in a state where they totally mismanage the funds, and that is the one potential risk, I guess.
Well, you're not going to
State
get
collapse.
but you're not going to get AI, taking over your firefighter job.
That's true. That is true.
So anyway, we started with bankruptcy.
And with AI taking over for firefighters.
Yeah.
You go, we go.
Yeah.
Backdraft.
Okay. So, Damon, I don't have anything else to add. I guess I'll just end with see ya.
Peace.